The moment she said it, I felt 67 years of my life turn to ash in my mouth. I was standing in my own kitchen, flour on my hands, baking a pie for my grandson, when my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "You've overstayed your welcome, Eleanor. It's time for you to leave." My son just stood there, said nothing. But what she didn't know was that less than 12 hours later, a courier would knock on that same door and hand me an envelope that would make her regret those words for the rest of her life. Because the house she was trying to kick me out of, the deed had just been recorded in my name only, and the next people walking through that door wouldn't be bringing apple pies. They'd be bringing eviction papers for her. Sarah rolled her eyes like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "We've been more than patient, Eleanor. You moved into the guest room temporarily after Tom passed. That was 3 years ago. Brandon and I need our space. We're starting our own family traditions now. You understand, right?" Family traditions. I raised that boy in this house, changed his diapers on the exact counter she was leaning against like she'd always belonged there. I worked double shifts at the hospital when Tom got sick, so we wouldn't lose this roof. I missed birthdays, holidays, my own mother's funeral, all so Brandon could have the childhood I never did. And now I was being told in my own kitchen that I no longer belonged. I felt the tears coming, hot and furious, but I swallowed them down. Thompson women don't cry in front of people who want to see them break. "I see," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. Somehow it didn't shake. Sarah gave a little satisfied nod, like she'd checked something off her to-do list. "Great! We'll give you a couple weeks to find somewhere else. Maybe one of those senior apartments downtown. I hear they have bingo on Tuesdays." Brandon finally glanced up. His eyes were red, guilty, but he still didn't say a word. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, the same room that used to be Brandon's when he was little, with the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, and I cried for the first time since Tom's funeral. Silent tears, the kind that hurt worse because they don't make a sound. I pressed my face into the pillow so they wouldn't hear me downstairs. I thought about the day I signed the house over to Brandon, how proud I'd been, how he'd hugged me and said, "Mom, you've done enough. Let me take care of you now." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. I fell asleep still wearing my flour-dusted apron, clutching the little silver locket Tom gave me on our 20th anniversary. At 6:12 a.m., someone knocked on the front door. I heard Sarah's annoyed voice float up the stairs. "Who on earth delivers this early?" Footsteps, the creak of the door, then silence. And then Brandon's voice, small and confused. "Mom, there's something here for you." I walked downstairs in my robe and slippers, my heart still raw from the night before. A courier in a brown uniform stood on the porch holding a thick manila envelope. "Eleanor Marie Thompson?" "That's me." He handed it over, had me sign, and left. Sarah was hovering, trying to peek. Brandon looked like he'd seen a ghost. I carried the envelope to the kitchen table, the same table where Sarah had gutted me less than 12 hours ago, and I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of heavy cream paper, official letterhead, and words I had to read 3 times before they made sense. "Congratulations, Mrs. Eleanor Thompson. Pursuant to the irrevocable trust established by Mr. Thomas James Thompson, The property located at 1427 Maple Street, Willow Creek, Ohio, is now titled solely and exclusively in your name. I stared at those words until they blurred. Sarah snatched the letter from my hand. Her face went white. This can't be right. We signed the house over to Brandon. We have the deed. I looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time in months, I smiled. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "You had a deed. Turns out my husband, God rest his soul, made sure you never had the deed." Little did she know, the envelope in that courier's hand was only the beginning.
I've always believed a house holds memories the way lungs hold air. You can't see them, but rip the walls open and every laugh, every tear, every whispered "I love you" comes rushing out. That's what 1427 Maple Street was to me. Not just bricks and mortar, it was the keeper of my whole life. Let me take you back, way back, to when Tom and I were 25 and stupid in love. We pulled up in his beat-up Chevy pickup with a U-Haul trailer rattling behind us and exactly $3,400 in a coffee can under the seat. The realtor handed us the keys and said, "Folks, this one's a fixer-upper." Tom just grinned, squeezed my hand and said, "Good, means we get to make it ours." And we did. Every single inch. The front porch swing? Tom built it the summer I was pregnant with Brandon. He sanded that wood so smooth I could rock our baby for hours without a single splinter. I still remember the creak it made when you push off with his foot, humming "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" off-key, while fireflies blinked around us like little floating lanterns. The kitchen window above the sink looks out on the apple tree we planted the day Brandon took his first steps. Tom swore that tree grew an extra foot every time our boy did something new. First word, first bike ride, first heartbreak. Every milestone, another ring in that trunk. I baked my first apple pie from those branches when Brandon was 7, and he ate 3 pieces and told me I should open a bakery. I laughed and said the only customers I wanted were sitting right here at this table. Upstairs, the master bedroom still has the faint pencil marks on the doorframe where we measured Brandon, and later little Emily, every birthday. Emily only made it to 4 feet 2 inches before leukemia stole her from us when she was 9. We never erase those marks. Some things you just can't bring yourself to touch. The living room fireplace is where Tom proposed for the second time. Yeah, second. The first time was in his truck with a ring pop because he couldn't wait. The real ring came on Christmas Eve, 1985. He got down on one knee in front of that fire, tears freezing on his cheeks because the heat was broken again, and said, "Ellie, I'm not rich, but I'll love you rich every single day." I still have the little velvet box hidden in my dresser. That house watched me bury a daughter. It watched me hold Tom's hand while cancer ate him down to 98 pounds. It watched me sit on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. after the funeral, sobbing so hard I thought my ribs would crack. And through every minute of it, that house held me up. After Tom passed, the nights were the worst. I'd walk from room to room like a ghost, touching the banister he refinished, running my fingers over the kitchen table scarred with decades of homework and Thanksgiving turkeys. Some nights I'd fall asleep in Brandon's old room just to feel closer to the days when life still made sense. Brandon was 34 when he and Sarah got married. Sweet ceremony, in the backyard under that same apple tree. I paid for the fairy lights, the catered barbecue, the open bar. Sarah hugged me that night and said, "Eleanor, you're the mom every girl dreams of having." I believed her. 2 years later, Tom's medical bills were drowning me. The mortgage was killing me. I was working part-time at the hospital gift shop, barely covering the property taxes. One night, Brandon came over, sat right there at the kitchen table and said, "Mom, let me help. Add me to the deed. I'll take over the payments. You'll never have to worry again." I cried. Relief, gratitude, love, all of it pouring out. I called my lawyer the next week, signed the papers that put Brandon's name right next to mine on the title, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. I didn't think twice. He was my son, my only living child, the house was his birthright anyway, wasn't it? I told myself I was being smart, practical, a mother making sure her boy never had to watch his childhood home get sold off to pay medical debt like so many families we knew. I hugged him so tight that day in the lawyer's office. He hugged me back and whispered, "You've carried everything for so long, Mom. Let me carry you now." I believed him with every beat of my foolish, trusting heart. For a while, it was good. I moved into the guest room just temporarily, I said, so they could have the master. I cooked dinners, babysat Jake when Sarah had her yoga classes, folded tiny superhero underwear with a smile on my face. I told my friends at church how blessed I was to have a son who wanted his mama close. I didn't see the slow fade coming. Didn't notice how temporarily started stretching into months, then years. Didn't realize that signing my name on those papers didn't just give Brandon security, it gave him power. Absolute, irreversible power. Because what I didn't know, what nobody told me until it was almost too late, was that Tom, my quiet, stubborn, brilliant Tom, had seen something coming that I never did. He'd made sure the house could never truly leave my hands. Not if I didn't want it to. But the biggest mistake a mother can make is believing her child will love her the same way she loves him.
It was just a plain oak rocker I'd had since Brandon was teething. I'd rocked both my babies in that chair, sung them to sleep while the floorboards creaked under us like an old lullaby. One morning, I came down for coffee, and it was gone. Not moved, gone. The spot by the living room window looked naked, like someone had ripped a tooth out of the house's smile. Sarah breezed past me with her green smoothie. "Oh, that old thing? We donated it. It was collecting dust, and honestly, Eleanor, it clashed with the new aesthetic." She said aesthetic like it was a holy word. I opened my mouth to protest, then closed it. It was just a chair, I told myself. Let it go. But it wasn't just a chair. It was the first domino. Next came the locks. I came home from the grocery store one rainy Tuesday, arms full of bags, the ones I still paid for because I refused to be a burden, and my key wouldn't turn in the front door. I jiggled it, thinking it was stuck from the damp. Nothing. Sarah opened the door from the inside, phone in hand. "Oh, didn't Brandon text you? We had to change the locks. There's been break-ins on the next street over. Safety first, right?" She smiled the way a cat smiles at a cornered mouse. Brandon never did text me. I checked my phone 3 times. That night, I lay awake listening to the new deadbolt click into place from the outside. The sound echoed in my chest like a prison gate. After that, the little cuts came faster. My photographs started vanishing from the hallway. The one of Tom and me on our honeymoon in Niagara Falls. Gone. The framed picture of Emily in her pink ballet tutu, replaced by a generic beach sunset Sarah ordered off Etsy. I found my missing frames stacked in the garage like trash waiting for bulk pickup day. I asked Brandon about it one evening when Sarah was at book club. He rubbed the back of his neck, same way he did when he was 8 and broke my good vase. "Mom, Sarah just wants the house to feel like ours. You get that, right? It's not personal." Not personal. Erasing his dead father and sister wasn't personal? I started noticing the whispers. I'd walk into the kitchen and the conversation would stop mid-sentence. Sarah's eyes would flick to Brandon, then to me, then away. Once I caught the tail end, "Before the 30 days are up and she has tenant rights," my blood turned to ice water. Tenant rights. In the house I carried 2 children in the house I scrubbed on my hands and knees while working 12-hour shifts. I started sleeping with my purse under my pillow. Driver's license, social security card, the few pieces of jewelry Tom left me that Sarah kept admiring a little too closely. I felt like a guest who'd forgotten to leave. worse, like an intruder. Meals became battlefields. Sarah would sigh dramatically when I started cooking. "Brandon's on a low-carb kick, Eleanor. Maybe save the potatoes for whenever?" Whenever I was gone, she meant. I stopped eating with them, picked at yogurt in my room while listening to them laugh downstairs like a family I no longer belonged to. The guest room shrank around me. My clothes got pushed to one tiny corner of the closet so Sarah could store her seasonal decor. My books disappeared from the living room shelves, replaced by matching gray baskets labeled throws and remotes. One day, I found my wedding album in the donate pile. The corner was bent, like someone had tossed it without a second thought. I started counting exits the way people count sheep. How many days until I had to leave? Where would I go? The senior apartments downtown had a 3-year wait list, and I wasn't ready to be warehoused yet. I had maybe $8,000 in savings, everything left after Tom's medical bills. Not enough for a deposit and first month's rent anywhere decent. Some nights I sat on the floor of the guest room, back against the door so no one could come in without me knowing, and I cried without sound. I prayed. I bargained with God. I even thought about calling my sister in Florida, but the idea of admitting I'd been thrown out of my own house by my own son kept the phone in my hand silent. The worst moment came on a Sunday in early November. I came downstairs early to make coffee, my one small ritual I still clung to, and found Sarah at the kitchen island with a real estate agent. Spread out between them were glossy listings, condos in Florida, townhouses downtown, a cute little bungalow 2 streets over, all with big red sold banners in the mock-ups. Sarah looked up and didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "Oh, morning, Eleanor. We're just planning ahead. Brandon wants to upgrade before interest rates climb up again." Upgrade? As if this house, this life, was a starter home they'd outgrown. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I crept downstairs in my socks. The house was dark except for the glow of the streetlight through the kitchen window. I opened the drawer where we used to keep takeout menus and birthday cards. There, underneath a stack of coupons, was a manila folder I'd never seen before. I carried it to the laundry room, closed the door, and turned on the little light above the washer. Inside were printouts. A listing agreement already signed by Brandon, listing the house for $675,000. An acceptance letter from a senior living facility in Dayton, non-refundable deposit paid. And worst of all, an eviction notice drafted by some lawyer, dated 2 weeks from now. Formal, cold, legal. 30 days to vacate the premises. My knees gave out. I sat on the cold tile floor and read every word until they swam. They weren't waiting for me to leave gracefully. They were pushing me out like an unwanted tenant. I folded the papers, slid them back exactly as I'd found them, and went upstairs. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark staring at those glow-in-the-dark stars Brandon had begged Tom to stick up when he was 6, and I made myself a promise. If they wanted me gone that badly, fine. But they were going to learn that some doors only open one way. And then, one night, I found the paperwork that proved they were about to take everything from me. Forever. The morning after I found their eviction papers, something shifted inside me. Not rage, not yet. Something colder, clearer. Like the first hard frost that kills the last of the garden but makes the air feel brand new. I didn't sleep. I sat at the little desk in the guest room, the one Sarah had already labeled nursery storage, and I opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a lacked cedar box Tom had given me the Christmas before he got sick. He'd made me promise never to open it unless the wolves were at the door. I laughed through my tears that night. Tom and his old Marine sayings. I thought he was being dramatic. My fingers shook as I turned the tiny key I still wore on a chain around my neck.
Inside the box, his purple heart from Vietnam, a faded photo of us at Virginia Beach in 1981, and a sealed white envelope with my name written in his careful block letters. I knew what it was before I even broke the seal. Tom had always been 10 moves ahead of everyone. The letter was dated March 12, 2022, 8 months before he passed, 2 years after I'd foolishly added Brandon to the deed. My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and someone has made you feel small in the home we built together. That thought hurts me more than any cancer ever could. You remember when I kept disappearing to run errands those last months? I wasn't buying fishing lures. I was meeting with Richard Hayes. Yes, old Dick Hayes from the VFW who retired into estate law. We set up an irrevocable trust. The house, the land, everything goes into the trust the day after my death. You are the sole beneficiary for your lifetime. When you're gone, it can go to Brandon and any grandchildren, but never, not ever, can it be sold, mortgaged, or taken from you while you draw breath. I watched Brandon change after he married Sarah. I saw the way she looked at our things like they were already hers. I'm sorry I didn't say it out loud, honey. A dying man doesn't want to break his wife's heart with suspicions, but I couldn't leave you defenseless. The trust activated automatically. Richard has the papers. All you have to do is call him. I love you bigger than the sky, Ellie Bell. Always have, always will. Be the strong woman I married, and if anyone tries to push you out of our home, you push back twice as hard. Forever yours, Tom. I read it 4 times. Then I pressed that letter to my chest and cried the way I hadn't allowed myself since the funeral. Ugly, loud, healing sobs that shook the bed. When the sun came up, I looked like hell, but I felt like heaven. I showered, put on my Sunday best, the navy dress I wore to Emily's memorial, and called Richard Hayes. "Ellie Thompson," I said when he answered, voice steady as steel. "I think it's time." He laughed, warm and relieved. "Tom said you'd call on a Wednesday. It's Thursday." "Close enough," I replied. "The papers are already filed at the courthouse. The recorder's office stamped everything yesterday afternoon. It's done. The house is yours alone, free and clear. Brandon's name was stripped the second the trust triggered. Legally, he's been living in your house rent-free for 3 years." I closed my eyes and let that sink in. Then Richard added the cherry on top. Tom left a little extra in the trust for taxes, maintenance, and whatever makes Ellie smile in. There's about $87,000 in there right now. You'll never be homeless, darling. Not ever again. I thanked him, hung up, and walked downstairs. Sarah was at the island scrolling listings on her phone, sipping her cold-pressed juice. Brandon was pouring cereal like a man waiting for the floor to drop out from under him. He'd been doing that a lot lately. I set the cedar box on the counter with a soft thud. Sarah branched up. "What's that old thing?" I didn't answer her. I looked at my son. "Brandon," I said calmly, "the courier coming this morning isn't bringing Christmas cookies." His spoon froze halfway to his mouth. At 9:03 a.m. exactly, the doorbell rang. Sarah rolled her eyes and went to answer it, muttering about solicitors. She opened the door and stopped dead. A courier in a crisp uniform held out the same kind of manila envelope I'd received in my imagination 1,000 times during the night. "Certified delivery for Eleanor Marie Thompson. Signature required." Sarah tried to take it. The courier pulled it back. "Ma'am, I need Mrs. Thompson herself." I walked forward, slowly, enjoying every click of my heels on the hardwood Tom and I had laid together. I signed, thanked the man, closed the door. Then I turned to them and opened the envelope right there in the foyer. Inside, the new recorded deed, my name, only my name, in bold black and white. And beneath it, a letter from Richard on thick letterhead.
Dear Mrs. Thompson, congratulations. As of 4:17 p.m. yesterday, you are the sole owner of 1427 Maple Street. Any prior transfers have been nullified by the irrevocable trust. Enclosed, please find copies for your records. We are at your disposal should you require assistance with guest arrangements. Warmest regards, Richard J. Hayes, LLC. Sarah snatched the papers from my hand, scanned them, and her face went the color of spoiled milk. "This is impossible," she hissed. "You have lawyers, too. You can't just—" "I can, and I did." Brandon started, shaking his head. "Mom, there's got to be a mistake. You signed the house over fair and square." I met his eyes, really met them, for the first time in months. "Your father saw this coming, sweetheart. He protected me when I was too blind to protect myself. The house was never yours to sell. It wasn't even yours to kick me out of." Sarah started yelling about fraud, about suing, about calling the police. I just smiled, the first real smile I'd felt in years. "Call whoever you want, honey. But you might want to start packing instead, because the next people knocking on that door won't be delivering papers. They'll be here to change the locks." That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same table where she told me I'd overstayed my welcome, and I planned exactly how justice would taste: sweet, ice cold, and served with a smile.
When you're ready, I'll give you the day I took my house back, word for word, tier for tier, box for box. Just say go. The day I took my house back started just like any other late November morning in Willow Creek, except the air tasted different. Sharper, like the world had been holding its breath for 3 years and finally let it out. I woke up before the sun, slipped into the soft gray slacks and cream sweater I'd bought for Tom's retirement party that never happened, and made coffee in my kitchen the way I used to. Strong, 2 sugars, just a splash of real cream. I stood at the window watching the apple tree drop its last leaves, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the fragile kind, the unbreakable kind. At 8 a.m. sharp, Richard Hayes pulled into the driveway in his old silver Buick, followed by Deputy Martinez, someone I used to bring chicken soup to when his wife had pneumonia, and 2 locksmiths from Hanson's Hardware on Main Street. I'd known the Hanson boys since they were in diapers. Small towns remember kindness. I opened the front door before anyone even knocked. "Morning, gentlemen," I said, voice calm as Sunday service. "Come on in. Coffee's hot." Richard gave me a wink. "You sure you want to do this in person, Ellie? We can serve papers and be done." I smiled the way a woman smiles when she's already won. "Oh, I'm sure." Sarah's voice floated down the stairs, shrill and sleepy. "Brandon, there's people here. Tell them we're not interested in whatever they're selling." Brandon appeared at the top of the stairs in his pajama pants, hair sticking up, eyes wide when he saw the uniforms. Little Jake peeked out from behind his legs, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. I looked up at my son and spoke loud enough for the whole house to hear. "Brandon, Sarah, family meeting in the living room, 5 minutes. Bring whatever you don't want left behind." Sarah stormed down first, robe tied tight, face already red. "What is this, Eleanor? Some kind of joke?" I didn't answer. I just walked into the living room, took my place in front of the fireplace, the spot where Tom proposed twice, and waited. They came, Sarah fuming, Brandon pale, Jake confused in his daddy's arms. Richard stood to my right, Deputy Martinez to my left. The locksmiths waited quietly by the door. I started speaking the way you speak when every word has been rehearsed in your head 1,000 times. 3 weeks ago, Sarah looked me in the eye in that kitchen and told me I had overstayed my welcome in the home I paid for with 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears. She told me I had 2 weeks to leave. "Well," I said, pulling the new deed from a folder Richard handed me, "today is moving day."
I held the deed up so they could see my name in bold. Eleanor Marie Thompson, sole owner. Sarah lunged for it. Deputy Martinez stepped forward just enough. She froze. Brandon found his voice. "Mom, please, we can figure this out. We're family." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and my heart hurt, but it didn't break. Not this time. Family doesn't draft eviction notices against a 67-year-old widow, Brandon. Family doesn't hide real estate listings while smiling across the dinner table. Family doesn't throw their mother's wedding album in the donate pile. Sarah started yelling about lawyers, about contesting the trust, about how I was a bitter old woman who couldn't let go. I waited until she ran out of air. Then I said the words I'd practiced in the mirror until they felt like velvet over steel. "Sarah, you've overstayed your welcome." The room went dead silent. Even the grandfather clock seemed to hold its breath. I nodded to Richard. He handed them each a crisp, white envelope. Inside, he said, "You'll find a formal 30-day notice to vacate, effective today. That gives you until December 20th. After that, the sheriff will assist with removal if necessary. There's also a list of storage units in the county and a printout of available rentals. I took the liberty to highlight the ones that allow pets. Jake has that goldfish, doesn't he?" Sarah ripped open her envelope, scanned it, and let out a sound I'd never heard from a human before. Half scream, half animal. Brandon dropped to his knees right there on the rug I'd bought the year he started kindergarten. "Mom, I'm sorry. I got scared. The mortgage, the baby on the way. Sarah kept saying—" I knelt down so we were eye to eye, the way I used to when he fell off his bike and skinned his knee. "You stopped being my little boy the day you decided your mother was disposable, Brandon. I loved you enough to give you everything. You loved me only until it was inconvenient." I stood up. Deputy Martinez cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am, the locksmiths need to change the locks now for security." Sarah spun toward the door like she was going to run. One of the Hanson boys was already there, arms folded, polite but immovable. I looked at Jake, who was starting to cry quietly against his daddy's neck. "Jake, honey," I said softly, "Grandma's got your dinosaur blanket in the hallway closet. Why don't you go grab it?" He wriggled down and ran. Kids always know when the storm is about to break. For the next 3 hours, I sat on the porch swing, sipping coffee, watching them carry boxes past the rose bushes I planted the year Amelia started chemo. Sarah cried, screamed, begged, threatened. At one point, she threw a suitcase so hard it burst open on the walkway, her designer dresses spilling across the frost like wounded birds. Brandon loaded their SUV in silence, shoulders shaking. When the last box was in, he walked over to me. Can we at least say goodbye to the house?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. "You lost that privilege when you changed the locks on me." He nodded like a man who finally understood the weight of what he had done. Sarah tried one last time. "This isn't over, Eleanor. We'll fight this." I smiled, small and sad, and utterly unafraid. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Fight a United States Marine's dying wish. See how that works out for you." They drove away at 12:47 p.m. I stood in the driveway until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Then I walked back inside, closed the door, and leaned against it for a long time. The house was quiet, really quiet, the kind of quiet that heals. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't flinch when I heard footsteps. Because the only footsteps in my house were mine. They thought they had broken me, but they forgot the quiet ones are the most dangerous. When you're ready for peace after the storm, just say the word. The first night the house was truly mine again, I didn't sleep. I walked from room to room with every light blazing, touching walls, running my fingers over door frames, whispering thank you,
to the man who had never really left me. At 3 a.m., I found myself in the kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile, eating apple pie straight from the tin with a fork, tears rolling down my cheeks because it tasted like every good day we ever had. The next morning, I opened all the windows, even though it was 38 degrees outside. I wanted the stale air gone. I wanted their voices gone. I wanted the house to breathe with me again. I started small. I went to the hardware store on Main and bought 3 gallons of the softest blue paint I could find, the exact shade Tom called Ellie's Sky. I spent an entire weekend painting the living room walls myself, radio turned up loud to classic country, singing off-key while paint freckled my hair like gray stars. When the last stroke dried, I hung our wedding portrait right back above the fireplace where it belonged. Tom's eyes smiled down at me like he was proud. Then came the chair. I drove to the little antique barn 10 miles out and found the most beautiful oak rocker you've ever seen. Hand-carved spindles, wide arms, perfect for holding grandbabies. I paid extra to have it delivered that same afternoon. I placed it exactly where my old one used to sit, by the window that looks out on the apple tree. That night, I rocked in it for hours, wrapped in the quilt my own mother pieced the year I got married, and I felt the house sigh in relief. Word travels fast in Willow Creek. By the end of that first week, cars slowed down in front of the house like they used to on Christmas Eve when Tom strung too many lights. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years showed up on the doorstep with casseroles, pound cakes, and shy smiles. Mrs. Delgado from across the street hugged me so hard my feet left the ground. She said, "We always knew something wasn't right over here. We're just glad you're back, Eleanor." I never told a soul the ugly details. Didn't need to. The for sale sign that had mysteriously appeared in the yard one night disappeared by morning. Nobody ever admitted to pulling it up with a tractor, but somebody did. That's small-town love. The grandkids came first through Brandon's cousin, Lisa, who never liked Sarah anyway. She texted me one Sunday, "Can the kids come see Grandma's house? They miss you." I cried so hard I had to sit down on the porch steps. An hour later, Lisa's minivan pulled up and 4 little ones spilled out like puppies. Jake was first, running full speed into my arms, legs pumping, yelling, "Gamma! Gamma!" He didn't let go for 20 minutes. We baked cookies, we raked leaves into giant piles, and jumped in them until we were breathless. We hung paper snowflakes on the Christmas tree I put up the day after Thanksgiving. Real tree, crooked in the stand the way Tom always insisted, because perfect is boring. Their laughter bounced off the walls and settled into the corners like it had never left. Brandon called once. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. His voice was hoarse. "Mom, can we talk?" I listened while he told me they were renting a cramped 2-bedroom downtown, that Sarah was angry all the time, that Jake cried for his old room. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, "I hope you find peace, Brandon. I really do. But peace starts with accountability. When you're ready to own what you did, not just say sorry, but own it, my door will be open. Until then, take care of those babies." I hung up gently. It hurt, but it didn't destroy me. Spring came early that year. The apple tree exploded in pink blossoms, so thick the branches bowed like they were clapping. I planted roses along the front walk again, yellow ones, Tom's favorite. I turned the guest room back into Brandon's old room, but softer now. New quilt, fresh paint, glow-in-the-dark stars still on the ceiling because some things are sacred. Some evenings I sit on the porch swing with a glass of sweet tea and watch the streetlights come on, one by one. Kids ride bikes, dogs bark at squirrels. Life moves the way it's supposed to. People started calling me the Queen of Maple Street, half joking, half serious.
I'd laugh and wave them off, but secretly, I liked it. After years of feeling invisible, it felt good to be seen. Some nights the echoes still come. Sarah's sharp voice, the slam of boxes, Brandon's broken "Mom!" But they're faint now. Mostly what I hear is the creak of my rocker, the wind chimes Tom hung the summer Emily started dancing, and my own laughter mixing with the grandkids when they chase fireflies in the yard. I'm 68 now, healthier than I've been in a decade. I volunteer at the hospital gift shop again, take watercolor classes at the senior center. Don't laugh, I'm getting pretty good. And every Sunday I cook a big dinner, and anybody who's lonely knows they've got a place at my table. The house is happy. You can feel it when you walk in, warm, settled, full of stories that finally have a happy ending.
If you're still here with me after everything I just told you, thank you. Thank you for sitting with me through the tears, the anger, the quiet nights when I wasn't sure the sun would ever feel warm again. Thank you for letting me lay my heart bare. I need to look straight into your eyes now, the way I wish someone had looked into mine years ago and said these words loud and clear. Listen to me. Your worth is not measured by how much of yourself you give away, not by how many times you say, "It's okay," when someone treats you like an afterthought, not by how quietly you suffer so nobody else has to be uncomfortable. I learned that the hard way. I almost handed my home, my memories, my dignity to people who decided I was replaceable the moment I became inconvenient. I almost woke up one day in a tiny beige apartment with nothing but a suitcase and a lifetime of regrets. And I'm nobody special. I'm just a widow from a small town in Ohio who loved too blindly and trusted too completely. If it can happen to me, it can happen to any of us. So if you're watching this and your stomach is in knots because someone, your child, your spouse, your sibling, anyone, is making you feel like you take up too much space in your own life, please hear me. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You do not have to shrink so they can grow. You are allowed to protect your peace, your home, your name, your heart, even if the person asking you to give it up shares your blood. Get your important papers in order. Talk to a lawyer when things feel off, not after the locks are changed. Never, ever sign away the roof over your head without understanding every single word. And never forget that real love doesn't come with an eviction notice. I wish I could reach through this screen and hold the hand of every parent who's crying in their car right now because their grown child looked at them like a burden. I wish I could tell every widow staring at an empty side of the bed that her story doesn't end with goodbye. I wish I could hug every person who feels invisible and whisper, "You still matter. You still belong." And sometimes the greatest act of love you can give yourself is closing the door on anyone who makes you feel otherwise. Today, I'm 70 now. No, wait, the years slipped by faster than I expect. And I still live at 1427 Maple Street. The apple tree is heavier with fruit every season. The porch swing still creaks in the evenings. And my door is open to anyone who needs a safe place to land, as long as they remember that kindness is required, but being taken for granted is never on the menu again. If you're out there feeling lost, scared, or smaller than you used to be, take a deep breath, stand up straight, and remember one thing. Sometimes the deed coming back in your name, whether it's a house, your confidence, or your life, is the universe's way of looking you in the eye and saying, loud and clear, "Welcome home. You never left." Thank you for letting me tell my story. If it helped even one person feel less alone tonight, then every tear was worth it. Which city or town are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear they're stronger than they know. See you in the next one, loves. Stay kind to yourselves.